that a little bit. Okay. Well, I think it's very important to have some understanding that the nature of these ceremonies is quite ancient and has tremendous cultural and psychological impact. The forms that have been carried in Tibet for 1,000 years originated in India quite a long time ago, medieval India, and unfortunately that entire tradition was wiped out by militant Islam in the 11th century quite thoroughly. So the world lost the benefit of an entire culture based on a very symbiotic relationship between Hinduism and its various forms and various styles and types of Buddhism. This is a very unique society. The high point of medieval India was quite remarkable, the cosmopolitan society. Its culture influenced not only the Indian subcontinent but also Central Asia, and quite frankly, if you look at some of the historical connections, went as far as Europe in a number of interesting ways, which may be beyond the discussion for this evening, but there was before the 20th and 21st century, the only other major planetary culture that we know of in history was along the Silk routes in ancient Central Asia. So that entire Indian Buddhist culture went as far as Western China and went as far as Eastern Europe and into areas of the Middle East. You had Jewish people, Christian people, various Taoists, Hindus, and so on, different shamanic groups, everyone pretty much living in harmony in a fairly affluent and educated social structure. That disappeared so thoroughly that it was only in the beginning of the 20th century, maybe late 1800s, that there were even thoughts that these ancient cities along the Silk Route even were real. They were considered mythological. This golden age is all like fairy tales. And R.L. Stein, some of the German archaeologists, found ruins in what is now basically desert that showed that indeed these were incredibly sophisticated societies, and they disappeared pretty much without a trace under the tide of fundamentalism and the sword of Islam. So I think it's important that we have the opportunity now, the Tibetan Diaspora since the 50s and 60s, where there was almost a complete destruction of their culture. We have in the West opportunity to receive a living tradition, to study a living tradition, to interact with a living tradition of a wisdom culture that thankfully was preserved for 1,000 years behind the Himalayas in ancient Tibet until the 1950s. And now it's come over intact into the modern world and has a lot to say to the modern world. This is not stuff that's just strange or exotic or some quaint, ancient yogic thing. There's a lot there that bears close study and application for the 21st century, and possibly for even the survival of humanity as a urbane species. Otherwise, we're going to degenerate to all these little ethnic and religious warfares and further clobber each other. So this message of universal peace, the technologies of working with the mind, the various yogic disciplines, I think have a tremendous value. It's in a way similar to finding the Library of Alexandria intact, plus having entire lineages of the professors and philosophers who can actually explicate the texts still living somewhere and giving us all that ancient wisdom from millennia ago available for our use now. I think it's a tremendous time to be alive, have access to this remarkable tradition.
That's great.